Today we're going to be talking about the SOAPS tone analysis, which is a method of analysis that can be used on all texts, but is usually used on shorter texts, like speeches. So, the SOAPS tone analysis can be formally defined as a method of analysis that asks students to consider a text speaker, occasion, audience, purpose, and tone. We can break this down into its smaller parts. When considering a text speaker, one should ask themselves, who is or are the person or people who wrote this, and what do we know about him, her, or them? For instance, if we were analyzing the Gettysburg Address, we could write that the speaker is Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States, who is most noted for leading the U.S. through its Civil War in the 1860s. When considering a text occasion, one should ask themselves, what is the time and place? What is the historic context? Again, if we're analyzing the Gettysburg Address, we could write that the occasion is a speech at the National Soldiers' Cemetery in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, following the defeat of the Confederate soldiers by the Union Army at the Battle of Gettysburg in 1863, the battle of the Civil War with the most casualties. When considering a text audience, one should ask themselves, who was this written for? We know that the audience can be very important to the text. Regarding the Gettysburg Address, we could write that the audience was not only those present at the speech, but all the nation of U.S. citizens, as well as any other citizen of the world who would be interested in the American Civil War. When considering a text purpose, one should ask themselves, why was this written? What main goals are evident? For Lincoln, we could write that his purpose was to redefine the war as an effort not only for the Union, but for the principle of human rights. His purpose could also be to ensure the world's citizens that the U.S. and its notions of democracy would prevail for years to come. When considering a text subject, one should ask themselves, what are the specific key ideas evident? This is where we would go through Lincoln's speech and, citing the text, list all of his apparent key ideas. And finally, when considering the text tone, one should ask themselves, what is the attitude expressed by the speaker? How does the speaker's diction and use of rhetorical devices contribute to this? Here is where we would use what we've learned about diction and rhetorical devices and how they affect the meaning and tone of a text, and use them. We would propose an overall tone for the speech and describe how the speaker's uses of diction and/or rhetorical devices supports it. So, here's a sample template for writing a SOAPS tone analysis. It is not an essay analysis, but a brief analysis, so it may be only one paragraph, or it may be 2 paragraphs, or even 3 paragraphs. This all depends on how you choose to organize your information. I tend to consider the speaker, occasion, audience, and purpose in one paragraph, and the subject and tone in a second paragraph, since the last 2 require the most amount of thinking and writing. Now that you know the basics of the SOAPS tone analysis, we'll have more time to practice writing one together tomorrow in class.